This is Family Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Neena Pandey. How you doing? You are a mom, wife, serial entrepreneur, and Forbes author. A lot of hats. So,
Thank
welcome
you.
to the Family Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
Thank you so much. I'm great and so nice to be on your show. I want to say hi to all your audience.
Well, thank you. We do appreciate being able to talk to different people from all over the world on our show. That's kind of what we do. And a couple of things we do. We asked a couple of questions before we get into the heart of anybody's story.
Mhm.
And one of the first questions we ask is like, what motivates you?
So that's a great question. If I think about my life and my values, I think I'm motivated by the idea of creating impact. So whether it's empowering women to take charge of their careers, whether it's helping artisans share their craft, or mentoring entrepreneurs to turn their ideas into businesses. I think the potential to turn vision into reality and make a tangible difference in people's life, that fuels my drive. I mean, I have seen how businesses can be the vehicles for change, not just for the founder, but for the entire community. And that keeps me inspired every day.
Yeah, I love the idea of creativity because I'm an artist, and I wear a bunch of hats as we talked about. But like the artistic creative drive, it's not just for a singer songwriter or a painter. If you're an entrepreneur and you create a startup, if you have a business and you provide a service, you're using your creative abilities all the time. But some people tend to
Absolutely.
like you're not Da Vinci, you maybe not be like Da Vinci level, but
Yeah.
you're still into using your creative muse. I think everybody has that, but some people kind of don't give themselves enough credit, how much
Exactly.
they actually
Yeah.
use.
No, absolutely. And I love and I respect artists so much. Both my kids, they're into music. And I always tell, I have a lot of my clients who is an artist, who are artists, and they are transforming their art into businesses. So I always tell them that, that's basically, that's also fueling your work. Because think about the business ideas that were created. I mean, these days we have so many business models, such creative ways to deliver things, to produce things. It's not an artist doing it, right? I mean, there's an art in everything you do, and
Yeah,
that's what
it's like the
inspires
art
me.
and science. I mean, a doctor, a lot of it's art, yeah, and it's sciences combined. And a lot of things are like that. There's like people want to think things are black and white, and I tend to think things are very kind of gray. That there's a lot of colors that intermingle. There's a
Yeah.
lot going on, and people want to know. They want to pin you down and say, "What do you do?" But when you talk to a lot of people, I've talked to over 1,000 people on this podcast. You
Mhm.
find that people wear a lot of hats, and some people want them to pin it down to say, "What is the main hat that you have?" But like most people have a lot of different, you know, aspects to who they are.
Yeah, and this is interesting because we could go on and on about that. I also feel that, you are defined by what you do and you have to describe that in a sentence, right? But your life, who you actually are, it's basically an interplay of so many factors and you do so many things. I have businesses, but if you ask me what I do, I'll not say I'm the CEO of String Code because that's just one aspect of my being, right?
Hmm. Yeah, because I mean that's the thing when you hit people like I said they want to pin you down. My day job, I'm a business system analyst. I
Yeah.
don't think of myself, and I mean, some people, I know actuaries, and they say I'm an actuary,
Hmm.
and that's who they feel they are. But like I know a lot of people who are in accounting and they play in a band on the side,
Wow.
or they
Yeah.
do acting or theater on the side because when they just want to be able to you know actualize in their life and have things that where they're multifaceted, which is I think people are starting to kind of buy into the fact that you can be, especially since the pandemic, because I think a lot of people went and they actually found out what they really wanted to do when they had
And you
time
would
to
be
think about it.
absolutely, and you would be amazed. So my daughter, she just performed in San Jose Opera, and I was backstage meeting with many artists. And many of these artists, they have a full-time job. So there was a guy who works for Accenture, and he has been doing opera for the past 10 years. And he says, my job at Accenture, it pays for the second job. So
Yeah,
this is how much passionate they are. And that also bleeds into their other job, right? Because they're more creative, they can think on their feet, they have so many
yeah.
ideas. So I just really feel that this everything makes a person whole.
Yeah, it's like the flow state. I'm a very much a flow state type of creator where, yeah, I might have an idea. I've talked to authors and they've got outlines, they do world building, they do character designs that are very intricate. But a lot of times they'll tell you like sometimes I have all these things I designed and I planned out, but it's that flow state. I'm at the typewriter, I'm at my word processor, I'm on my voice memo, and this idea just comes. And sometimes that idea will override the planned stuff that they
Yes.
designed. Because when you're open to, you
Hmm.
know, that kind of muse idea that comes out of from the universe, then you find that like you're I think you get better at being a creator because you're willing to synthesize things maybe that are not fully planned out, but
I
you
think
can
you've put
kind
it
of
very beautifully. Yeah, absolutely
off the
agree.
cuff. It's
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
improvisation. You know, you see an actor on an off Broadway play, and they're
Hmm.
kind of a method actor, and every day they do that show, they play that character a little different because they've
Yeah.
become the character, and well, if I'm feeling like this, and I've actually decided I've become this character, well, I know this character would act like this today.
Hmm.
So it's like their performance is actually very different every day that you
Exactly.
see it,
Exactly.
and that's actually the
Yeah.
cool thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the reason we see so many people, doing these side things. Just, they're not just doing it as a time pass, right? I mean, that's actually fueling into their creativity. So I'm so inspired by your background as well. Kudos to you.
Yeah, I think it's like your early life did it make you want to kind of focus on creativity? What made you like want to be somebody who is it kind of like I don't know? You seem to be someone that's helping other people. You're paying it forward to have
Hmm.
other creators, actualize. Like, what made you want to be that type of person?
Hmm. Honestly, it was the intersection of necessity and curiosity. So when I transitioned from the corporate, I was 16 years into Silicon Valley. I was in marketing. When I transitioned from corporate to entrepreneurship, I had to create something out of nothing. So whether it was designing a curriculum for my education company or curating artisanal products for IndieRoots, and my recent venture, String Code, whether it's creating outfit for women, I discovered a deep passion for building things from scratch. So I just love the challenge of bringing an idea to life and the satisfaction of seeing it impact others. So even when I was in Oracle, I was in Sun, and then Oracle acquired us. So I was the messaging ambassador for Oracle, integrating Sun's products into Oracle's. And we created a team of us. We created a business idea that later became Oracle Star offering. So it's not really about creating outfits or products or services. It's about the entire vision around creativity, how you approach creativity, right? Bringing new things, as I said, new business model. So being a creator, I believe, is about translating your unique perspective into something tangible, and that's what excites me the most.
Yeah, I think that's why when I talk to a lot of artists, right? If you think about like a painter,
Hmm.
an author, a musician, like
Hmm.
there's a lot. Well, I like to talk to a lot of independent authors and people because they tend to not want to clone whatever the algorithm is saying is popular. They're more
Hmm.
willing to invest in like their personal statement, their vision. And I,
Hmm.
as somebody who's going around looking for people to talk to, like
Hmm.
emerging people to kind of bring
Hmm.
attention, the world's attention to, I would like to focus on people that have a unique vision because they're actually taking what's inside themselves and bringing it to the world. And I find that very interesting rather than seeing somebody remake the same movie or the same book or the same idea because there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of people who want to play it safe and they take something that's a known thing and just keep on repeating the known thing rather than actually doing something that's original.
I think you bring up a very good point around coding, that people take the same code and not put it, change it. So and now I think it's more important than ever because we live in an age where AI does everything, right? So how do you differentiate yourself? I mean, if you just go by the standard route, then anyone can do your thing, right? It's that human element, that creativity, which distinguishes you from this world where almost anything can be done by AI.
Yeah, that's the thing is like you like as a musician, I look at AI and I had some tech bro tell me
Hmm.
that AI could replace singer songwriters and musicians, and I'm like, I don't think you understand what it means to be a musician.
Yeah.
For you to say that shows me you don't understand the skill or you don't respect the skill
Hmm.
because AI just goes into the machine learning library and just copies what's been put into the library, right? And you've made decisions on what you're going to teach it, right? And then you're making like ideas. Well, this is the canon that I selected.
Hmm.
Human being, they take everything they've ever heard or seen or whatever, and then they have their own internal feelings. And so when you see somebody like a Miles Davis in 1957 playing in France,
Hmm.
in that moment, he's taking that energy that's inside of him and outside of him and playing that. And that's not anything a computer can do.
Exactly,
And if you
exactly.
don't understand that, then you really disrespect art.
As you mentioned, an opera artist, she or he would play every day differently, right? Based on probably the audience around them, probably the vibe, right? Whatever they may be feeling. If a very, it's depending on the macroeconomic condition, right? Say someday is a festival, right? Christmas. Then it's just fine tuning thing based on inputs that you receive, right? Which
Yeah.
AI cannot do as yet.
Yeah, it's not sentient. It doesn't have its own unique personality. We're not like Star Trek Next Generation. We got a data that actually has a personality. I've not seen anything but mimic personality,
Yeah,
mimic
exactly.
personality, but it's not
Mhm.
original personality that has its own emotional curves that, and it's really, in art and I think in creativity, it's what you've gone through. It's the mistakes you've made and then the choices you make. It's the discernment you have as an artist to pick a certain tone or to pick a color or pick a phrase
Mhm.
and know how it's going to work and know what your craft. Like if so there's a certain level of like 10,000 hours of doing the work of the refining what you do as an artist, as a human
Mhm.
being. And I think every human being is an artist and how you approach things. Like you could be that business analyst in a meeting and how you see what the options are for the business case is based on what you've dealt with for the last 20 years. And so your opinion is probably going to be different than the next BSA's opinion because you have your experiences and they have their experiences and that's why you bring different people together so you get different opinions.
Right, absolutely. And I think even if everything is the same, right, AI can also have 20 years of data, but then still, you know, ability to pivot based on EQ, that is an inherent quality in a human being. But for
Mhm.
an AI, you need to feed that. And how
Yeah,
much
to
can you
train
feed
it.
it,
Yeah,
right?
how much can you train them what the different cases are?
Exactly,
How
exactly.
many case statements can you give? And where a human being, that case can change, even though somebody could tell you this is their belief, but
Mhm.
suddenly something by tomorrow, their baseline changes, and that's a
Exactly.
human. That's a human. Humans can do that. They can pivot like 360. So
Absolutely. Yeah, based on maybe a life event. Or, there's a story of a king back in, India in Mughal days, that he was, who used to, give a lot of atrocities and so on. But suddenly one day he saw the battlefield and his entire demeanor changed. He saw so many corpses, he saw so many people dying, and then it completely pivoted. So, those kind of moments only human being can experience, and only human beings are capable of creating something out of these moments.
yeah, and I look at it as a tool, like like in music, I can use AI to make choices about like my mix, which
Hmm.
was like I can have it go and say, make this mix sound like a Fleetwood Mac Rumors album. Make
Hmm.
this mix sound like a Sergeant Pepper's album.
Hmm.
So it'll go and change the EQ for all the things from the bass to the vocals to the guitar. It will go through and look at what those were
Mhm.
instead of. Now saves me a lot of time that I don't have to manually go do that. But I'm not having it write the song. I'm having it help me with a part of the song process, which is
Right.
more like the sound engineering after
Mhm.
the right fact. And you can color a song after you wrote it
Mhm.
with these kind of processes. And we've always used machines to do that,
Mhm.
but now we use higher tech machines where it's not physical analog or
Mhm.
digital.
Mhm.
It can be AI machines, which are digital, but they're doing things that the old digital can't do. It's making discernments. It's actually changing things at a level that we never had, that level of discrete control. And I can take advantage of that. And it's like, hey, that's a tool. So if you use it as a tool, but it's like an author. Like, are you gonna let AI write the book because it
Yeah.
could from a bunch of prompts? Or are you gonna write the book and have it help you edit the book or turn a phrase or make some suggestions, but you're not gonna have it write 90% of the book. But you could, but I don't know if
People
anybody
are
wants to read
writing.
that book.
That example came to my mind right when you were talking about it. I think there are people who are writing 100% of the books through AI, of course, proofreading it later. But then soon, and with the threat that AI will take away jobs and so on, I think you said it very accurately that you need to only use that as a tool. The moment you're completely dependent on AI, that's when your competitive edge goes away, right? So you
Yeah,
need
because
to,
I think you're gonna
yeah.
phone it in. I mean, I think you're gonna phone it in. You're not, one of the things is like you use our tools so that we can do something better with our time.
Mhm.
So if you think about it, like if you use AI so I can do more critical thinking, or I can
Yeah.
do more creative thinking, or
Yeah.
I can do ideas that I couldn't have done because I have
Hmm.
time saving, because time is money. So if it saves me 5 hours worth of menial task, now I can spend that 5 hours on critical thinking task or
Yeah.
more creative tasks that maybe I didn't have time for. But you don't want to make you lazy where you're not using your head. You're not asking the questions. You're not going and learning new things that you've decided to just phone it in and sit and let it do everything. Then I think we're not in a good place.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think bottom line is not relying completely and using, as you said, using your brain, right? Using your brain either to tweak AI's input or to, do things and then get it proofread by AI, or even to write better prompts, right? Because you are seeing the output and you can create better responses. It's just that you have to constantly evolve, even if you
Yeah.
have to use AI completely.
Yeah. I like it for like workflow.
Yeah.
Like, so if I want to automate a workflow, say with example with this podcast, right? When I produce a podcast, I have to
Hmm.
create a landing page. The landing page has all the different places where I am. If I have an
Hmm.
automated workflow that automatically grabs, this and sends it to Spotify, sends it to Apple, sends it to
Yeah.
Amazon, creates the description, creates the SEO, creates the tags,
Hmm.
right? And intuitively looks through the description of the podcast and comes up with tags or listens to it and comes up with the tags. So there are tools that can make it those kind of menial tasks, but that's like distribution. That's
Yeah.
not actually production. I'm in a production right now. Distribution is a whole
Exactly.
nother thing. And if I actually have a tool that can help me with distribution, that's not that's good for me because I'm an artist. I'd rather do 5 podcasts than spend time working on one.
Exactly. Exactly. I think it's in the end we have witnessed it. This is AI is something which is very new, but then this concept is not new, right? Because machines were introduced so it could take menial jobs from and people can focus
Yeah.
more. So I think it's just another phase of
It's like the
uh,
production line,
evolution.
the automation line of Henry Ford for the Model
Yeah.
T. Was a time when people hand built the cars, and there's still people who like to hand build cars,
Yeah.
and you'll pay the money when they do that. Because there's the
Yeah.
people who that want to have that customized car. There's other people who say, well, there's a benefit in having a mass produced car. But there's still people that will go and look for the custom built thing because they want that custom thing. So I don't think that ever goes away.
Yeah.
A custom built product or service or something that when you go in and do you really want a therapist that's a chatbot, or do you want a therapist that's actually listening to what you say
Yeah.
and processing it from a human perspective rather than the machine library perspective?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you said, that, even with the physical therapist, I think there are so many parts people could automate, businesses could automate while keeping the core competency in house, while doing something which nobody else can do.
Yeah, it's that human interaction, the listening, and then listening to that unique voice. Because I think the people with the cookie cutter trying to say make everybody fit in a box, like everybody wants to be, known that we all humans are kind of the same, but they're not the same, right? Everybody's an individual, right? So if people want to be heard. So if your chatbot really might not be listening to you the way that a human is listening to you.
No,
So
absolutely, yeah. And even between reps, as you rightly mentioned, each rep is different, right? I mean, if you call Verizon,
yeah, different
get
person.
in touch with one rep who would be rude, and then the second rep, and you're like,
Not.
okay, I don't want to talk to this rep, and then you'll call again, and then the other rep would be amazing. So
It's like,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
you get the lottery. It's like, which one do I get today?
exactly.
But branding and surviving in the marketplace. What are your? I think we kind of been talking about like everybody's got their own secret sauce of individualism. But what do you think personal branding is to you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and uh, so I feel that we are living in a very, very different age, right? Where even if I have products, it's people are not buying products. People are buying stories. People are buying an basic. People are buying what the entrepreneur has to bring, right? So back in those days, brands used to be on pedestal, and we would not even know the name of the owner or the CEO of big top brands, right? But
Hmm.
nowadays, everyone is out there. Everyone is trying to connect with customers because these days people make buying decisions on the basis of values, on the basis of how their values align with that of the company. So which is where personal branding becomes really, really important, right? I mean, you need to go out there, you need to be authentic, you need to have a marketing voice, and that needs to be authentic. So it's funny that you asked this question yesterday. 2 days back I was posting something on LinkedIn, and I misspelled Manhattan. And then there were so many people who reached out to me, and many of those people were not even in my network. So they sent me messages saying that, hey, great article, by the way, there is a spelling mistake. So then I wrote, on top of that, that I'm like, this is what real marketing is. People really don't care about. Back in those days, I would be really embarrassed at this
Hmm.
mistake coming from a
About the
marketer.
perfection
But
thing. Yeah.
now, we need to go out there, and this is telling people that, hey, everyone is imperfect, right? I mean, I am imperfect.
Yeah.
People want to see that. People want to see who you really are.
Authenticity. Yeah, but that's the thing
Exactly.
about in the arts is like a lot of times we'll spend too much time. Like if I, as an artist, I'll point out to a lot of young musicians, like if you're sitting on a song and you keep on doing it take after take for like 50 takes,
Hmm.
I think you're overdoing it because a lot of times what we find is like the first three or four are closer to what you were trying to do. But you'll
Yeah.
say, "Oh, the mic was bad,"
Hmm.
or maybe I hit like a microtonal mistake, or there's a micro rhythmic mistake. But a
Hmm.
lot of times you go back to the past,
Hmm.
you listen to stuff from the 40s, the 50s, 60s, 70s. The
Hmm.
producers would allow some of those mistakes to hit the record because
Yeah.
the overall production was so good,
Hmm.
or so the artist hit the mark in terms of what they were trying to say. And the producer said, "You know what? You really got to hear. By the time you get to take 20, you're
Hmm.
losing it. You're losing the impact of what you did because you're trying to second guess yourself. You're getting scared of what you said, and you're trying to rewrite it, and you're actually wrecking the song. You're wrecking
And
the
you've
work.
lost passion, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
can start off with a rigor, and then after 20 takes, you're like done,
yeah,
right?
you wreck it because then you're trying too hard. It's like when people say you're doing that too hard, it's like you want it to feel authentic and not forced. If it starts to feel forced, it loses impact. And, I think that's
Absolutely,
where
yeah.
people make a mistake trying to make things perfect.
Yeah, so my 2 cents in this situation, the rules of engagement have changed completely. So, and this is specifically true in a world saturated with AI and automation, as we were talking about, and curated perfection, right? That's what I call it. That what standouts is how authentic you are. It's not your polished content, it's realness, relatability, and resonance, right? So basically, my 2 cents for people who have a brand or who want to go out there and sell their product or services. What matters most is showing up, creating meaningful dialogue, and reminding your audience that you are human too. So if
Mhm.
your product is not capable of something, if it has a defect, go out there and talk about it. That's
Yeah.
how people will believe
Don't
you, will
trust.
trust you.
Yeah. If you're out there, and a lot of times, like, people want things sometimes for the flaw, and people are like, "Well, why would I want something for a flaw?" But there's a lot of musicians we can kind of show people like there are certain instruments that had like inherent flaws, but the
Okay.
flaws actually are the thing that makes it, right? And so the reason you use it is because it has something that's different, and it's not actually it did something that wasn't intended. And so you're like, wow, like that was, the designer didn't even intend that. But then once the musicians got it, they said, well, this is actually the best part of this thing. And it wasn't even why it was built.
Chance
And
discovery, right? Serendipity, as they call it.
yeah, it just happens like happy accidents. We call them happy accidents.
Like the
That,
coins, right? I mean, if they have a defect, then
yeah, it makes them worth more. Like,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there was one of my best synthesizers, a Moog,
Hmm.
mini Moog. It had this thing in a mixer that used to overload and cause distortion. Now, to a lot of audio engineers, they say, well, that distortion, that's bad.
Hmm.
But the musicians, when they got a hold of it, they
Hmm.
used it and it became like the secret sauce of the instrument. The
Hmm.
fact that it had this distorted sound
Hmm.
was used all through the 60s and 70s, all over progressive rock from like Yes and Genesis, all these bands, because it did something that hadn't been heard before. It was like a newfound sound.
Wow.
And so instead of correcting it,
Hmm.
the company said, "Wow, we accidentally found this, and let's like try to like perfect the way this thing works." But then people said, "We know what? We like the original way you did it." Every time they tried to perfect it, people were like, "No, just go back to what it was, the mistake. Just keep the mistake the way it was."
That's hilarious. Wow. That's an amazing story. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
what people
absolutely.
forget. Like some people, some things become, out there. Like aspartame wasn't meant to be like a sweetener. They found out it was like, oh, it was something that they found it was sweet, and so, "Oh, we can use this."
Yeah. No,
Happy
absolutely. Yeah.
accident. It happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think now, in the age of AI, people need to remember that now more than ever. That's what my takeaway is.
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of kids, like, they spend their time trying to be perfect because they go on Instagram
Hmm.
and they see somebody and they see some influencer, and it's like they don't know how much of that is photoshopped, how much of that has been, like, AI, influenced or, altered, and so then they get this vision that's not, really approachable. And it's somewhat damaging to young people, because they're thinking they have to hit this mark that's not even a real mark.
Absolutely. And in music, as you mentioned, there's auto tuner, right? You don't even
Yeah,
know what music is real. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. Like you got a guy like Prince. He never used that, right? Like he would go out and dance on stage and do all that, and it's not not fake at all. No auto tune, using his real voice, and that's like kind of unheard of today. You go listen to people today; they've got backing tracks of their voice
Yeah.
doubled, tripled, quadrupled to make them sound bigger than who they are. It's their own voice, like doubled and tripled and quadrupled. And so when they kind of like are stuck on a track, they're stuck on what they originally wrote. So when they go to play it, they have to sing it exactly the way they wrote it, which is
Hmm.
kind of antithetical to being a musician. Is like you tend to want to go live and sing it a little different. But now we've locked ourselves into these computer generated loops that,
Hmm.
like, to me are very destructive to the originality of the music.
It's very scary to me also, the auto tune, because you don't even know, right, who has real talent. And of course, unless I think unless there's a competition, they don't allow it in the competition. But then in social media world, you cannot
Yeah, you
differentiate
don't know
real
what's real
talent
and
then.
what's not. There's a lot of fake
Exactly.
in these. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do, and then when you go to New Orleans or you go to Austin, you go to
Hmm.
certain places,
Hmm.
and there's still places where the forms of the real musicians show up, and then you know the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like okay, I guess I'm not at that level.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's just people got to understand when the people tell you like, oh, AI can replace a singer, it can replace an actor, it can replace a
Mhm.
painter. Like, okay, I understand you want to make money from from the actual process of the tokens. Like you want to sell the time in the token use and make so the money instead of going to an artist
Hmm.
is going to an AI developer or it's going to the company that's using the algorithm. And so people are like have to understand that. Like when you go and don't have your book cover done by an artist,
Mhm.
you're paying Chat GPT or Gemini or OpenAI or whatever. You're paying them.
Mhm.
And so you're not supporting real artists. You're supporting tech millionaires to get more to be more of a tech millionaire.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah.
And so yeah, you just have to think about like what are you trying to do? Like do you understand? And I think like culture to me is the arts. Every culture has a rich history in the arts. Like every single culture on
Hmm.
the planet,
Hmm.
there's art that's tied to it. But then what are we told as young people? Oh, we're like, well, what are you gonna do to make money? When art
Yeah.
is actually part of your culture, but you minimize it or you try to say it's not worth anything when we actually know it's probably the most worthwhile thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the world is changed very quickly. But yeah, I still remember growing up, there were two career paths. One was medicine, one was engineering, and then these things were not even considered you know good to pursue as a career. I mean, even the notion did not existed.
Yeah, because if people ask you like, if you go to a conservatory and you go, okay, you're gonna be a PhD level
Hmm.
music teacher or you're gonna be working for one of the big orchestras.
Hmm.
So you're like, yeah, okay. But not most people, if they say they're gonna go to Berkeley,
Hmm.
they're looking like, are you gonna do a real job? You're gonna try to be you gonna
Yeah.
get a real job? It's like anytime they minimize it. So like the actuary, the scientist, the lawyer, the accountant, those are like more valued when you actually in your heart, like the art is what makes it like a good reason to get up in the morning. It's
Yeah.
not just because of like the day to day stuff we have to deal with, but it's the things that the arts give us are those really beautiful moments in life that like make it worthwhile like getting up.
No, absolutely. And when you are in that environment, so when I was watching opera, it's just, going to another planets, I mean, we need to be reminded that in I mean, in theater, these guys don't even have time to retake. They have to remember each and every line. So it's human, art it's a perfect level, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just so serene
Well, it's
to
like it's
see
that
that.
moment. Like a lot of times what we get taught as musicians is like you have to kind of live in the moment. Like if you're a musician and you're playing a song and then you hit the perceived bad note, we're
Hmm.
kind of trained to kind of roll off of that, so the audience doesn't even know we hit the wrong note. Like that
Yeah.
we'll play it off. It's kind of like our ability to handle something thrown at us, right? So we can, and when you're really good, you hardly even know that the band actually missed a cue. They just went a different direction, and it happens in arts. It happens in you could be painting, and you decide to do a different layer than what you intended, and you kind of go with it. It's the idea to be able to go with like the in the moment. There's no mistake. It's like an opportunity. Like, if you think of it as an opportunity rather than a mistake, it opens up your mind and your possibilities, I think.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. And I think that's the reason, when we were talking about that music opens up your mind and it makes you better at other things also. So the experience I was talking about, it was so surreal because, I saw what human beings are capable of. And then you take the same learnings, or you take the same, uh, you know, uh, outlook, and you are doing your job, right? So even there, you'll be thrown, different things will be thrown your way. You have to pivot very quickly, you have to make adjustments. So I think it's the mindset that
Yeah.
matters, right?
Yeah, like if you're throwing the curveball, can you handle it? Right, and it's like the team building. Like if you think about it, I always say, with sports is always the example of teams, but
Hmm.
musicians, like we work in teams too. And so the idea is like the team concept is like you're working as this whole unit, right? And you can respond to all the things that are happening like real time. If you're on the field with a football team, there's a lot of players. They're all kind of interacting. It's a very big team. If you're on, a band, it's a five-piece band. There's a lot of like it's connected at a smaller level, but there's a lot of like non-verbal communication going on and trusting each other. But you're still working as a team to finish that song.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. And think about choir, right? My kids are part
yeah,
of choir, and then so many, so many kids. And if somebody makes a mistake, then it may,
yeah, it points, yeah, it can
impact
come
the
out.
entire. Exactly. So,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's just that team building, is very important because to be able to work with other people and learn how to kind of roll with each other's imperfections, because that's the thing. What it is like when you get to have a really good choir, everybody can kind of they're really listening to each other, and
Exactly.
they're trying to all, and it's a balance of staying in harmony. And when you have a really good, or orchestral or choir group, is like they are actually paying attention not to just the page, but to each other, and they're listening and they're
Yeah.
responding. And it's really amazing when they actually make the micro tonal changes to make sure they all stay in tune. And it's like, 10,000 hours worth of work. You do that
Yeah.
work and it seems seamless, but that's the effort. And people don't understand how much work goes into things. They think you can just go 0 to 100. I'm at $1 million. Like, no, you have to do a lot of work.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, if you see these things in action, then you'll appreciate it. And it's just so amazing. As I was saying, even small little things, how people do it, how much time do they spend in doing one little thing. It's just so surreal. The entire experience is surreal.
I think taking the plunge, like to actually take an idea,
Hmm.
and it's a lot of risk. Like I like it. I think a lot of humans are like risk averse
Hmm.
because we're kind of going back to the old days when the
Hmm.
wolf was at the door. So you're in the tribe and the wolf's at the door. He's like, it's safer to stay in the tribe, right,
Hmm.
rather than get kicked out. Because you get kicked out of the tribe, you're going to have to face that wolf by yourself.
Yeah.
So then you're going to tend to kind of subjugate to the tribal point of view and not take the risk of getting kicked out, right? So the idea today is like if you do something that's unconventional, it's like you got kicked out and the wolf's at the door. And so
Hmm.
you have to like have a lot of guts and a lot of
Yeah.
ability to take risk and to deal with the vulnerability of that situation, which a lot of people like they'll take safety over that
Hmm.
rather than going and trying something that puts them on the edge.
Hmm. No, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's a
So
nice story about the wolf. Yes.
well, yeah, I always like to try to do the analogies, but it's like when
Hmm.
you're taking a plunge, it's like that's the kind of idea to kind of segue into like segging into if you're an entrepreneur, you're taking that risk. Like you can't be risk averse, but you got to make,
Hmm.
smart decisions. And you might not, your first ideas might not be fully successful. So, like if you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like they weren't
Hmm.
100% out the gate,
Hmm.
hitting all the marks. It took time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in my mind, when I relate that to business, I was, in Silicon Valley having, a cushiony job and growing. And then me taking a plunge in entrepreneurship, for me the wolf is what if, right? My salary, would I be able to replace that? I have kids, I have mortgage, I live in California. So I think
Mm,
that's the wolf,
mhm.
right? Which is completely unknown, right? I mean, nobody knows what will happen. But then there is a reward, right?
Well, I think the reward is like when you actually are taking your idea, right? And it's like you're working for yourself. It's your vision. It's kind of like if you're a musician, right, and you're reading somebody else's song
Hmm.
and you're playing it, and you're like you just as a studio musician or a session musician, like
Hmm.
you could get paid to do that, and you could do that your whole life, but you didn't write any of that.
Hmm.
And there's a different type of player that actually goes and is like, I'm gonna write it,
Hmm.
right? Right. Versus I'm gonna get the paycheck for going in and playing what somebody wrote.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's a different. It's like you both can play, but one of you, what the difference is, the other player actually writes their own stuff, right? And
That's the
that's a risk.
Yeah. That's really, the equivalent of working for corporate as against being an entrepreneur, right? So
Yeah,
that's
it's the
exactly what
same
it
kind of
is.
analogy again. It's like I try to
Exactly.
do the analogies, but yeah, it's like people sometimes want that paycheck, right?
Hmm.
They want to know they got the bonus, they got the perks, they got this. If they go for travel, the boss is paying for the jet, paying for the hotel. I'm not paying that out of my pocket to go do that kind of work. But once you own it, when you go to do all that, it's like you're footing the bill. You're doing all the work. You're taking all the risk. You're having to do all the tasks that were there and within a corporation. Now you have to do it. You have to do your taxes. You have to take care of regulations. You have to deal with legal. You have all this stuff. And if you don't plan it out, I guess it can be overwhelming. What do you have like advice for people if maybe they try to take on like everything at once rather than kind of figuring it out?
Yeah, so and I think you made a very good point about the fear, which we all know, right? I mean, and it's more than fear. So if I'm representing a company and I'm going and I'm doing things, then yes, there are risks, but then those are not my personal risk, right? They could be something. If I mess up, I could be reprimanded at work, or I would probably lose the next bonus. But when you are an entrepreneur, every little thing that you do, every risk that you take, you have to evaluate that, whether you're doing it right or not, and it could have smaller or very big consequences. And the problem is that many people, and I also I have had businesses, and then now I'm a business coach, so I help people who want to start their own business part time or full time. I want to help people like how I was 8 years ago. I wanted to be an entrepreneur for as long as I remember, but I was not, you know, I was not ready to take the first step. I was scared because of the unknown, what I don't
Hmm.
know. And that is absolutely true. I'll give you an example that, there is, even if you make one small mistake, you are running a company, and then there are multiple things, some things which are more aligned with your core competency, say product, and there's some additional things like accounting and trademarking and so on. My attorney made one mistake in trademarking application, and I lost the brand name that
Oh,
I have been, using for the past 8 years, and this is for my home decor company. So, and then this is just a very, very small thing. And there are so many things which impacts your business. And the problem is, first of all, for solo entrepreneurs, I was also solo entrepreneur for a long time after I started. First of all, you don't have the bandwidth to do everything yourself. And second, you don't know, and
hmm,
you wouldn't know until you have made the mistake. So I would say that I learned from failures, because I didn't, I was just on my own, I didn't take any help. But my advice to people is that, if they're learning from failures, then they're not only losing their money. So for and in small trademark thing, wasted thousands of dollars, and 10-15 thousand, because I was trademarked for multiple categories. But more importantly, I lost my brand name, which I was curating for the past 8 years. So you not only lose time, sorry, money, but you lose your time to market, because
Mhm.
that's a small thing that will delay your launch by years. So you are also losing all the revenue that could be coming in. So I mean, that's the worst thing, and something which I regret doing. My path to success could have been accelerated if I was just judicious about taking advice. So I just, my piece of advice is, don't do it all alone. You
Mhm. Try to
Mhm.
get yeah, you have to
You can
kinda
do
know
better than that.
your wheelhouse in terms of know what you don't know, you know, like, be aware of your limitations, and that's like, it's always good to do that because, like, if you can't do every task perfectly unless you're some kind of, like, phenom that just, like, suddenly you have an aptitude like the Da Vinci kind of models, like, you're just like, "Oh, wow, you can hit everything." But then most people
Exactly.
can't do that, right? So, knowing that most people can't do that, like, realize what you can do, and then if you're honest, you have an honest assessment, then you can actually, I think, make a lot of progress because when you do that kind of honest assessment of what your limitations are and knowing where you gotta work, and then knowing where you could use some assistance and feedback loops are real important. Like we got beta readers, beta listeners that we bounce ideas off of. So we kind of know whether what the market's going to have be. We can throw it into an underground forum and hear if the song's going to go anywhere
Yeah.
before we actually push and spend a lot of money trying to get it out to a bigger market. So there are things you can do by asking people, like, and what's your advice? When you're working in a whiteboard session, like a jazz
Mm.
session, and with a bunch of engineers, is like you just don't want one engineer saying everything. Like
Exactly.
I want to hear all the engineers. I want to hear what the what the down, what's the positive, what's the negative, what are the options. Think about it out the box. Like what happens if this happens? Like blue sky, you know, and you really want people to really kind of tear it apart because they want to stress test it, like in engineering. It's like you can't put something out there unless you stress test it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you will not ask for advice from somebody who has never done it, right? So, like in the engineer example, they may have different experiences working on different components. Similarly, business, I learned so much from failures. Now, I am an expert on multiple topics and I know how things work. So, you cannot figure all that out on your own. And yes, I tell everyone that if you are doing things right, if you are persevering, you'll definitely have success. I am completely positive of that. What happens is people are generally, they quit before being successful due to
Mhm.
multiple reasons. Either they may have invested a lot of money and then they are running out of funds, or they are discouraged. So one thing was, remember I was telling you that they're losing their time to market. They're also losing their morale, because then people start to question themselves, do I even have it in me? Hey, why
Mhm.
did I leave my job and I started my own thing? I don't think I'm capable of that. And I think that's most disastrous of all.
Yeah,
If you
bad
don't have a
self-talk.
solid, yeah, mindset, then you are gonna quit.
Yeah, negative self-talk is like the worst thing, and you run into it with artists all the time. Where you'd be very surprised. It's like they don't think they're good enough, and it's like, well, you're just on stage.
Hmm.
But there's sometimes a lot of like self-confidence issues
Hmm.
with people that you wouldn't think have it, but they do because it's kind of like their stage self is different than who they are, and
Yeah.
they a lot of times they have a lot of doubts, and they have their ideas to have the kind of right people around them,
Hmm.
or if they don't have the right kind of people around them, then their ideas don't go anywhere because they'll
Yeah.
let like the demon voice in their head say, "Oh, you're not good enough. Don't do it. Just give up." And
Yeah.
they
Exactly, and that demon voice gets intensified, and you need to people need to have small, quick wins. I mean, if somebody is working on something, you're in your case musician, and whatever they're doing, nobody's appreciating them, then it's very likely to get discouraged. And people who don't have a sound, you know mindset, which is why what I always say, that before you do anything, business or even in your case artist, I think it's very important to have the right mindset, because businesses were not built because somebody thought Jeff Bezos didn't think that he will create Amazon, but he started with something small, he failed, he pivoted, then in the end product came out to be something way bigger than what he would have even thought of.
Yeah.
So that's why you need to incorporate failure into your, I mean, you
You
need
throw it
to
at the
have the
wall.
right
It's kind of
mindset.
like throwing a dart at the wall. I mean, there's a lot of times there's a throw it at the wall, especially in the modern world with this, like the internet.
Hmm,
Like you could have, 20, 30 years ago, if you're a musician and you try to play at the pizza place or the local bar,
hmm,
if you don't get picked up with some, and our recruiter doesn't come from a big
hmm,
record company and see you,
hmm,
you're not going to get picked up, right? But now you can throw it at the wall on the net,
hmm.
right? And then your town might not like you, but somewhere in you know Norway
I
or
know.
Australia,
Uh-huh.
suddenly people like you, and you're like, because you wouldn't know that though, because like just because like you went down to the coffee shop and played, everybody booed, but then you went and put it on SoundCloud, and suddenly you got people in Indonesia like jumping up and down, loving your stuff. So like the idea is like you got to throw it at the wall, and we actually have a big wall because of the net. You can get
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
lot of stuff out there that you'd be very surprised, like where people listen or people find things in different markets than what you would have expected.
No, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you. We are very fortunate in that sense that, we have things have opened up so much, right? I mean, you can do so many things. I remember when we were growing up, we didn't have even Google, right? So if we needed to get informed about something, read up on
Library.
things, library, right? Think about it. And then shuffling through loads of books. And these days, I tell my kids, like, if they ask something, I mean, guys, you guys have Google, right? I mean,
Yeah, we had a
let's
Dewey
talk.
Decimal System. I had to go through index cards trying to find something.
Exactly.
Like kids, I don't
Exactly.
even know if they know what that is. How to find stuff in the old systems and the old libraries. And nobody even probably had. They don't even know if they have those cards anymore. But they used to have to go through the cards to find things. They even find a book. You have to go look through this card system. There's no computer,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's like the research had to do. I mean, even when like I went to school in '86,
Hmm.
and the computer level wasn't that high, and
Yeah.
everything was still being done in the libraries. You would just go into these repositories and pull in like real research, and that's like I wonder how that is to kids today. They're like, What do you mean you had to go find it in the book?"
They don't even, yeah, they don't even understand it. So I
Yeah,
was in, yeah, so there's the San Jose Museum, computer science. So basically, not computer science, technology museum. So I saw the floppy disk in that museum. Do you remember that?
yeah, I
So
had
our
floppies. That was
kids
the
would not
computers I
even
would
have
play with.
seen, yeah, what that means.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I was on the old original Macs and the old IBMs that
Uh-huh.
had the floppies.
I know, I know.
Yeah, I was even before that, we had the ones with the tape drives, and the ones before that had the key punches with the card. 'Cause I'm a child of the '70s, and like in my high school actually had a mainframe with key punch operated cards. And actually, that's how I got introduced into programming. Like it was actually like machine language, like level stuff, like Pascal and Fortran and assembler, and it was all
Yeah,
really
yeah,
old
yeah. No, yeah,
old stuff.
yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah, that's the that world's changed a lot since then.
and world has changed very quickly because I still remember that, my first job at Sun, we were still, Sun had was the first to come up with networking, the concept of networking, didn't have internet before, like, the way it is now. And
Yeah, yeah,
even the virtualization, right? I mean, they had thin client, that machine, and that was the biggest achievement. And now, everything is virtual. We have AWS, and,
yeah.
now,
Everything's like virtual
yeah,
networks and VPNs, and everybody's like, I work remotely. I've worked remotely for the last 5 years, working with global teams because I can, and
yeah.
it just gives me life balance. Where I used to be a road warrior. I was in Japan for a couple of years. I would
Hmm.
go to American City, stay there for 7 8 months, bounce around for the clients, in front of clients for different purposes. But like now, most of that I don't need to do that anymore. And plus, they like
Yeah,
for my lifestyle, it's like I can't do this and do that. So I say, well, you know what?
exactly.
I want
Yeah,
to have a
yeah.
different balance.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I would say that, this we are very fortunate that things have shifted so much so quickly. But I think there are new challenges which our kids have to face, which we didn't have to. So I think, as we were mentioning earlier, that we the only constant is life is to adapt.
Yeah, to learn. Well, I try to tell people like my age, they get real frustrated. They say, well, I got to relearn everything. I said, in my job as a software guy,
Hmm.
I have to relearn things all the time. Some people
Yeah.
have been in jobs where they don't have to,
Hmm.
and they've kind of it's been a disservice because we're living in an age where you really need to go back to like if you were in college, what did they really teach you how to do? They taught you how to learn, right? They
Yeah.
taught you how to do the research. So if you need to learn something new, but now you thought you hit a pinnacle and you don't need to do that, right? But you do need to do that. And there's a lot of people in the world that need to understand like the future is you might have to have a little discomfort and learning something new because
Hmm.
the world is shifting so much that you're probably going to have to, you know, get out of your comfort zone to a little bit and actually do a little work.
I love what you said. I think it's so important for all schools and university to teach how to learn, right? Because you become outdated very quickly unless you're constantly learning in whatever job you are, definitely in technology. But in doctors, I mean, think about anything,
You
even
really do.
content creators, right? On Instagram, so many of them. You need to constantly innovate, learn new
Yeah, you got to
methods, right?
reinvent yourself or the algorithm will throw you away.
Exactly. No, absolutely.
So
That's
you
really
gotta, yeah, it always goes by quicker than I think. But yeah, I do have another interview at the top of the hour, but this has gone by so quickly. I always like
true.
lose track. But we do have your LinkedIn, and that will be fully clickable. And so right now you can't click on it, but that will be in the podcast description. We were just live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. So I'm sure people can connect with you out of your LinkedIn. That's how they connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to, first of all, it was amazing chatting with you. It's just going back in old times, and, I don't know how time flies. But for your listeners, I'm absolutely, connect with me. I would love to be in your feed. I would love to see you in my feed, whether or not we are working together. I just want to stay motivated and to be able to motivate you guys. So absolutely connect with me, and I'll see you around.
Well, thank you very much. And we always have people come back on the show when they have something else they want to bring to the world. So keep that in mind. And thank you again for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast. It's been great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And I would love to come back. Yes. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.